Hi YouTubers, hi and welcome to another show. I hope you're well. The Prime Minister has been to see the Queen. Parliament has been dissolved and the general election 2019 campaign season for the next 5 to 6 weeks is underway. Now, a lot has been said in the media about different issues relating to it, but the one I'm going to discuss now is from PinkNews.co.uk. I'm going to read out the main story and then comment a little bit at the end. Forgive me if you find it difficult to understand what I'm saying when I'm reading out. I'll try to be as clear as I can be, but I have dyslexia and so reading can be a bit difficult at times. So bear with me, here we go. Gender Recognition Act, Healthcare and Sex Work. What does the UK general election mean for trans rights? This is a piece by Vic Parsons, dated November 1st, 2019. Today is the 6th of November 2019. When Jeremy Corbyn announced that Labour would back a general election, you'd be forgiven if your first thought wasn't wondering how this would affect trans rights. With Brexit and the impending doom coming for us in the form of climate apocalypse, among other things, this election will be likely dominated by the themes of capitalism, socialism versus environmentalism versus nationalism versus whatever else it is that the Lib Dems want along with remaining in the EU. Trans rights are unlikely to be a headline issue. The Conservatives plan to weaponise trans issues to win votes in the north of England, where it seems they don't think there are many trans people and they don't think there are many trans allies. Could still materialise argumentably, given the prevalence of transphobia in the UK media and the increasing number of anti-trans hate crimes in public, the Tories don't need to weaponise them at all. We are already a much hated group and any politician speaking out for trans folk is likely to be abused for their efforts. The election does come at a critical time for the trans community, and not just because of equality affecting the possibilities that London will be underwater by the time Brexit actually happens. Trans issues that have been dominating the narrative for the past couple of years is reforming the Gender Recognition Act. By this, people who support trans rights understand reform to mean potentially making it simpler for trans people to change their gender on their birth certificate. People who don't support trans rights or think that they threaten women's rights disagree. The issue has dominated the discussion to the point where you'd be also forgiven for thinking that once the GRA is reformed, the fight for trans equality is over. A succession of Conservative politicians have delayed reforming it. We've had 5 ministers of equality since Theresa May announced the GRA reform plans back in 2017. One of them, Amber Rudd, was the minister twice. Despite repeated promises and huge public consultation in 2018 that collected the opinions of more than 100,000 people and organisations. But because of the main parties, it is unlikely all have a position on what they'll do with the GRA if they get into power. It wasn't in the Conservatives' 2017 manifesto, but it was in Labour's and the Lib Dems. The GRA reform is important. It is worth asking candidates about politicians who back A, reforming it, and B, reforming it how trans community would like it done. We'll hopefully be pro-trans rights in other situations. But the GRA is not the only issue affecting trans people. Will any politician address the fact that there are over 8 specialist gender clinics in England and Wales? It seems unlikely, although this lack of access to healthcare has something that will be on the minds of trans people who want to see a gender specialist. The dearth of clinics means that the wait for a first appointment is, on average, 2 years. Let that sink in for a minute. 2 years for an appointment to see a doctor. Of course, it would be more likely for trans healthcare to be on the radar of a politician if he had any trans politicians. At the last general election, at least 9 openly trans people were nominated to stand to be an MP. 4 Green, 3 Lib Dem, 2 Labour, but none were elected. Only 4 trans people stood in the 2015 and none in 2010. So this could be seen as an improvement. However, current anti-trans sentiment is running high, and it would be wholly understandable if aspiring trans politicians chose not to stand at this time around. Earlier this summer, 2 trans women were announced as prospective parliamentary candidates for the Brexit Party, but it is unclear if they will still be standing, given that the party's co-founder, not Nigel Farage, the other one, was unhappy about this. It might also be tricky for trans people to vote at all, seeing as Boris Johnson's plans to introduce photographic ID for voters will disproportionately affect the LGBT plus community, trans people especially, along with other marginalised groups. But some trans people will make it to the polls, and plenty of trans allies will too. Issues that politicians seeking their vote could think about include employing, seeing as 1 in 3 UK employers won't hire a trans person. Housing, as trans people, especially trans youth, are more likely to be homeless. 25% of trans people in the UK have experienced homelessness. A source of income for a significant chunk of the trans community, decriminalising sex work. A source of income for a significant chunk of the trans community, particularly trans women, supporting trans kids who are being used as a political football and who have alarmingly high rates of suicide attempts. Reversing custom mental health services, obviously, and doing something about the institutional transphobic UK media, which is most definitely exasperating all the above issues. Finally, watch out for any suggestion that trans people to be forced to carry ID cards. If there is one thing we definitely don't want, it is that from this election. I don't like the fact that the Tories are thinking of weaponising the trans issues. I mean, they read too much right-wing media. They seem to think that they're going to be able to use this as a whipping dog of some description. We're going to be the enemy to gain votes from. I think that's horrific. I don't want to be weaponised. I don't want anybody to weaponise me. I'm just an average voter, really. I'm just an average voter. I don't know who I'm going to be voting for. I'm definitely not voting Conservative. I've never voted Conservative for a number of reasons, and I never will. I don't know if I'll vote Labour this time. I'm not voting Liberal Democrat, mainly because of their coalition with the Tories in 2010 to 2015. And the austerity they planned with the Tories and instigated on the general public, which have caused these cuts and these issues to rise up in now. It's weaponising the trans issues. It just fills me with dread. We're facing bullying and aggression from the media enough as it is. We don't need the a possible government of the day turning on us. Where is the hope for GRA reform then? Where's the hope of any sort of reform for the LGBT plus community? If the Tories get in, it's horrific. Don't vote Tory. That's all I'm saying. If you're LGBT plus and you're thinking of voting Tory, don't vote against your own self-interest. It makes no sense to me why you would do that. The election's going to be held on the 12th of December. We don't know what the turnout's going to be like because I don't know if anybody knows what the weather's possibly going to be like that day. But Tory voters tend to turn out no matter what, so be aware. If you're a Remainer or a Leaver, weigh it up. But also consider you are voting a government in for the next 5 years that are going to have a mandate to run the country for 5 years. They're going to instigate all the reforms they want. If the Tories get in, we're going to have a hard Brexit, and it's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be some laissez-faire economic situation in this country, deregulation of the market and all the rest of it. And we're not going to get any of the institutions funding that we're hoping for in the future for the next 5 years. I know some of you have concerns about the Labour Party. I can understand that, but the media, like with the trans community, has been very good at blackening Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party's name and ruining it for them. It's not in the interest of the media to prop up Jeremy Corbyn because Jeremy Corbyn is against the status quo, and the media in this country is for the status quo. So if you want radical change, I suppose the only option you have is to either vote for your socialist candidate if they're standing, or vote for the Labour Party. I am considering voting for the Labour Party, but again, I'm not sure There's a lot of issues around it, and if there is a socialist candidate standing in my ward, they may get my vote. I don't know. I'm still undecided. I'm still unclear as how to vote. This whole election process is really concerning me. We need these issues in this report addressed for the whole community, for the whole LGBT plus community, for the whole queer community. We need decriminalisation of sex work. We need the GRA reform. And countless other examples. We need mental health services invested in. Of course we need mental health services invested in. That's the first place people who are coming to the trans community and coming to being trans go to. It's where a lot of the referrals come from. So we need this investment in these services. Tories have promised a lot. Whether they'll come around to investing in these institutions, I highly doubt it. The police cuts, they're not even employing the same number that they cut the last time around. It was 21,000 they cut, they're only employing 20,000. 7,000 police officers leave the police force every year. You can imagine what the balance is like if you take out 7,000 and then you put in another 7,000. You're just keeping the police numbers at their main level that they are at the moment. You're not really increasing them. Keep an eye out for the publicity in this election. Keep an open mind and weigh up the pros and cons. Please don't vote Conservative. Please don't vote Conservative. Even if you're a Brexiteer, don't vote Conservative. For God's sake, don't vote Conservative. We've just had 10 years of austerity. Have you learned nothing from the last 10 years of the economic depression that we have suffered? If you vote them back in, you're just rewarding them on their austerity platform. I fear the weaponisation of trans issues. It's only, from what I can gather, it's only something that's happened in a couple of focus groups, and the Tories are playing around with the idea. I really hope they don't do it, because I don't want to be a whipping horse or a whipping dog or whatever you want to call it in this general election. I really don't want that. I want people to vote on clear issues, not because they're anti-trans. I don't want to be a whipping horse for the Tory party. Get out there, vote, come what may, and vote for your candidate that you've chosen. Stick by it, but please don't vote Conservative. Please don't vote Conservative. That's my vlog. I wanted to do a bit more, but I'm running out of time. As the election goes on and issues come up, and if they start to weaponise the trans debate, I will log on again and do some other vlogs. But until then, YouTubers, thanks for watching. Please share, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, YouTubers. Bye.